Do you ever think about what you did to her? My mother hissed across the dinner table, her eyes sharp as knives. My father didn't even look up, just muttered, "She's lucky we didn't abandon her after what happened." And there it was again. That silent verdict, heavy as chains. I ruined my sister's life. My name is Alara. I'm 26. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. For 11 years, those words pressed on me like a coffin lid. Every achievement, every paycheck, every quiet joy, I was reminded I didn't deserve it. They told me my sister's pain was my fault, that her lost opportunities, her fragile health, her unhappiness were all because of me, and I believed them. So I worked. I worked until my bones ached, funneling every spare dollar into family expenses. My savings bled dry. My future slipped through my fingers, and still they demanded more. Yet late at night, lying in the cramped apartment they insisted I rent to stay close, I would wonder, if I really had ruined her life, why was I the only one paying? One evening, in a stack of duster boxes my parents shoved into the attic, I found something wedged between old bills and faded photos. A corner of paper, yellowed, official. My heart stuttered as I pulled it free, the words stamped across the top blaring louder than any accusation I'd ever heard. A report, the one they had hidden since day one. And suddenly, I realized I wasn't the villain in this story. The paper trembled in my hands. At first, I couldn't even process what I was seeing. Just medical jargon, dates, signatures. Then the truth surfaced like a corpse rising from the depths. It wasn't me. It had never been me. My sister's condition, the one I'd been accused of causing, was documented here, diagnosed before the night they said I ruined her. She'd been born with it. The report spelled it out in merciless black ink. No external trauma, no sibling involvement, no negligence. All those years of guilt, of silent apologies whispered into my pillow, had been built on a lie. I dropped to the attic floor, the dust clinging to my knees, the silence roaring. A laugh broke out of me, bitter, ragged, uncontrollable. They had known. My parents had known all along. And instead of telling me, they'd crafted a prison out of their silence, forcing me to bankroll their comforts while I withered under their blame. I thought back to the moments I'd begged them, "Please, tell me how I can make it right." Their answer had always been the same: more money, more sacrifice, more of me. I had sold my youth for their approval, my dreams for their comfort, and here, in my lap, was proof they had orchestrated it all. For the first time in 11 years, the guilt slipped from my shoulders, and what replaced it was sharper, colder. Not relief, not freedom. I tucked the report under my jacket like stolen treasure and climbed down from the attic. My hands were steady, my heartbeat strangely calm. 11 years of shame had burned away, leaving only a clarity I'd never known. At dinner that night, my parents carried on as always. My mother passed my father the bread basket, sighing theatrically. "Your sister had another bad day," she said, her eyes narrowing toward me. "I hope you're setting aside extra money this month." I slid into my chair slowly, my fingers brushing the edge of the hidden report in my pocket. "Funny," I said, my voice even. "I thought you said her bad days were my fault." My father looked up then, his fork clattering against the plate. "Don't start. You know what you did." But for the first time, I didn't bow my head. Instead, I leaned forward, my voice just above a whisper. "What I did was believe you. For 11 years. But the truth? The truth was buried in the attic." Their eyes flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. Recognition. Panic. My mother's smile twitched, her voice too quick. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I simply laid the folded report on the table between us. The room went silent. My father's face drained of color. My mother's hand froze midair. And in that silence, after more than a decade of humiliation, I finally felt power shift. My mother was the first to break. Her hand darted toward the paper, but I pressed my palm down, pinning it to the table. Read it, I said softly. She hesitated, her lips moving without sound. My father reached for his glass instead, gulping water as if it might wash away the moment. I leaned back, my voice steady. You told me I destroyed her life. You drained my savings, took my future, made me your scapegoat. But this report? It proves you knew, from the very beginning. My father slammed his fist against the table, rattling the dishes. That paper doesn't change the sacrifices we made. We had to protect this family. Protect. The word snapped from my throat like glass breaking. You didn't protect me. You bled me dry. You let me drown in guilt that never belonged to me. My mother's eyes glistened, but there was no remorse, only calculation. Ilara, you don't understand. We couldn't handle the costs alone. You were strong enough. We had to make you believe. Her voice cracked, and I saw the truth. It hadn't been about love or fairness. It had been convenience. A bitter laugh escaped me. So you destroyed your daughter to save yourselves. I stood, tucking the report back into my pocket. You've lived off me long enough. Their faces, pale, shaken, scrambling for excuses, burned into my memory as I walked away. For once, I wasn't carrying their shame. I was carrying their secret. I didn't sleep that night. The report lay on my desk, its pages glowing faintly under the lamp, like a map leading me out of a labyrinth I'd been trapped in since I was 15. For hours, I thought about every dollar I'd wired, every night shift I'd worked, every dream I'd buried because they said I owed. They had taken more than money. They had stolen time, the kind you never get back. By morning, my decision was made. I walked into the bank, the same one where my paychecks had been funneled into a family account, the one my parents had controlled. I handed the manager the report, my ID, and a calm smile. I'd like to review all withdrawals authorized under my name for the past 11 years. The manager raised his brows but nodded. Within an hour, the numbers spilled across the screen. Thousands upon thousands, rent I never lived in, medical bills I never saw, luxury expenses that had nothing to do with my sister, vacations, jewelry, even a down payment on their new car. The proof was all there. When I left the bank, I wasn't the girl who begged for forgiveness anymore. I was the woman holding receipts, both literal and metaphorical. And in my hands, I had leverage. My phone buzzed as I stepped into the sunlight. A message from my mother. We need to talk. Tonight. For the first time, I smiled when I saw her words. Because this time, the conversation would be mine. That evening, I arrived at the house with the report in my bag and the bank statements folded neatly beside it. My parents were already waiting at the table, tension hanging in the air like smoke before a storm. My father didn't waste time. Ilara, whatever you think you found, it doesn't matter. Family issues stay within family. I set the folder down between us. No, they don't. Not when you've been stealing from me for over a decade. My mother's voice rose, shrill and desperate. We did what we had to. Do you think your sister's care pays for itself? You wouldn't understand the pressure. I cut her off with a quiet firmness that startled even me. Pressure doesn't excuse theft. It doesn't excuse building your comfort on my misery. And it doesn't excuse turning me into the villain of a story I never wrote. My father's face darkened, but his eyes darted nervously to the folder. What do you want, then? Money? An apology? I leaned forward, holding his gaze. I want my life back. Every dollar you siphoned. Every cent you claimed in my name. You will repay it. If not, I take this report and these statements to the authorities. Silence. Heavy, choking silence. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for my father's. They had spent 11 years teaching me to bow my head. Tonight, for the first time, they bowed theirs. And I wasn't done yet. The days that followed were a quiet storm. My parents tried every tactic, pleading, guilt, even rage, but none of it landed anymore. Their words were paper arrows against the armor I now wore. I moved out of the cramped apartment they had pushed me into and found a place of my own, small but bright, with windows that opened to the sunrise. Every box I unpacked felt like a piece of myself returning. Then the first repayment arrived. A transfer into my account, marked settlement. It wasn't the full amount, not even close, but it was proof. They knew I wasn't bluffing. My sister called me one night, her voice soft, hesitant. "Ilara, Mom says you're angry. She says you're trying to tear the family apart." For a moment, I nearly cracked. Old habits die hard. But then I looked at the report on my desk, the lines that clued my name. "I'm not tearing us apart," I said gently. "I'm just refusing to be their scapegoat anymore. You deserve the truth too." She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, almost uncertain. "If that's true, then maybe you're the only one who ever really protected me." When the call ended, I sat in silence, tears brimming, not from guilt this time, but from something fiercer. Justice was no longer a dream. It was already in motion. And soon, they would learn what accountability really looked like. The final reckoning came not with shouting, but with signatures. My parents sat stiffly across from me at the attorney's office, their pride shriveled down to silence. The repayment plan was formalized, their assets tethered to debts they could no longer deny. Every page they signed was a quiet confession, a piece of power stripped from their grasp. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Watching them write their names under legal obligation was victory enough. Afterward, I walked out into the sunlight, the city humming around me. For the first time in 11 years, I breathed without the weight of borrowed shame. My savings account would slowly refill. My dreams would stretch their wings again. Weeks later, I returned to the attic where it had all begun. Dust still floated through the beams of light, but this time I wasn't searching for answers. I already had them. I tucked the report back into its box, not out of fear, but closure. As I stood there, I thought of the girl I had been, 15, frightened, convinced she was the villain of her sister's story. I whispered to her in the silence, "You were never guilty. You were only used." Walking out, I didn't feel like their daughter anymore. I felt like my own. And for the first time, the future wasn't something they could steal. It was mine, untouched, unburdened, unbroken.